Hello, friends. Welcome back to the While We're Waiting Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm Jill Sullivan, your host and one of the co-founders of the While We're Waiting ministry. This is a podcast of stories of devastating loss and grief and heartbreak and struggle, and stories of hope and healing and faith and, yes, even joy. Underlying every conversation is the hope we have in Jesus Christ, which makes it possible to not just survive the loss of a child, but to live well while we're waiting to see them again in heaven one day. You can learn more about our ministry and the free bereaved parent retreats we host by visiting our website at www.whilewe'rewaiting.org. Welcome to episode number 254, which is a continuation of my conversation with Michael and Peggy Mages. In our last episode, we were introduced to their son, Mason, a bold, kind-hearted, and faith-filled young man, and the tragic day they lost him in a drowning accident. In the second half, Michael and Peggy open up about life in the aftermath of loss. They share advice for newly bereaved parents, reflect on how grief has changed their marriage, their parenting, and their walk with the Lord, and offer insight into what it means to persevere in faith when the pain doesn't go away. From grief brain and Mason days to sacred circles and heavenly hope, their words are honest, practical, and rooted in Scripture. Whether you are fresh on the road of grief or walking beside someone who is, this episode is full of grace and truth for your journey. We'll pick up right where we left off last week. So as we're talking today, it's been almost 5 years since Mason went to heaven. How would you say that your grief has evolved over that time?
You know, they say don't move within the first year, don't make any big changes. And so we didn't. And then we decided we would like to move back closer to family. So we moved after a year. Michael stayed with the same company for a time. And that was really stressful. We should not have done it looking back. I had some weird health things happen then right when we moved and struggled for a good year. But I will say it was just very difficult. I feel like we were coming out of our shock into reality of he's really not coming back. And there's still some days now that I say he's really not going to come walking through the door, you know, but I'm glad that we did move. I'm glad that we're back in Kansas where we're from. And I'm probably more positive now than I was. I had many, many questions early on. And of course I still do. Early on, I know I had to pray a lot that the Lord just helped me to trust him because I certainly struggled with that. And so it's definitely brought me to clinging to him more. You know, when Mason died, we had just started as a family reading through the Bible in a year, you know, and I was angry for a while because we were still in the Old Testament and I hadn't gotten to the good part. And so I since then have 4 years now have read through the whole Bible in a year on my own. We completed it. Michael made sure that we continued that first year. And so it was just definitely a time of having to depend on the Lord because with us being new there to Colorado and then moving back here and being new here, he was all we had and all that really mattered anyways, I think, to comfort us. And so I would just say that we're able to relax more now and enjoy more of the outdoors for sure. I think being outside is very helpful for me. And we do enjoy hosting our monthly While We're Waiting support groups. We help facilitate grief share at our church. And it really is kind of a charge for us when we are able to walk alongside other families who have also lost a child. Although painful, and it does take us back to the earlier days a lot, we just know that's part of what we're called to do now, you know?
Yeah, and I would say for my grief evolution, just before Mason's drowning, our small group was faced with the question of how do you persevere in faith?
Hmm.
And that was an odd question to me because I thought just faith was faith and you didn't persevere in faith. So I brought up the question during the small group. I said, what does that mean to persevere in faith? And now I look back and say, why did I ask that question? Because I am persevering in my faith now that Mason's gone on. And it's really now I have that understanding of I'm pressing in to find who God is and who his character is, and how is this sovereign God in charge, and yet I need to be faithful in these things and still kind of press into and learn more about who he is. So I'm learning that and delivering that. And so for me, pain and sad times are just less frequent, but they're still as intense as they were, initially. So I'm able to kind of reconcile some of that with, okay, God, you're sovereign. It is all in your design. And how do I continue to seek that and learn who you are and who your character is on a regular basis, because I'm persevering in my faith with that. So the stories that I hear other waiting parents now bring me back quickly to those pain and that just sadness. But again, this is where I've got to persevere and continue to say, okay, God, your purpose is not what I'm trying to avoid. I'm seeking your purpose. I'm seeking to persevere. So let me cling to your purpose and not what's going on and why behind all that.
Well, and that perseverance, that's a daily choice that we all have to make, isn't it? Yeah. Like you said, it doesn't just come naturally.
Right.
After the loss of a child, anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'll also say that the way I pray has changed significantly. I was so angry for a while and said, why do we even pray if God already knows what's going to happen?
Sure.
If our days are truly numbered, why? And so Michael definitely helped me struggle through that, but I continue to be pointed back to that verse in First Thessalonians. Well, the Lord has told us to pray continually without ceasing. Right. So we definitely don't pray like we used to. And it's always his will, whether we like it or not.
It's amazing how many things change after the loss of a child. We look at everything so differently.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. In many ways, it's a good thing. So, at 5 years out, what advice would you give to a mom or dad who's listening who may be in the very early weeks or months of their journey?
I would say first and foremost, don't try to go back to your normal schedule. I did that. I tried to return, as much as we were able to with still the COVID restrictions, the kids, doing their sports. And I found my 2020 calendar the other day that I never threw away. And I have paper calendars. I'm one of those people. And
me too.
I had so many things written in there the weeks after Mason's funeral. I was so appalled at myself that I didn't take time to rest more. I jumped into a Bible study, which was really good. It was in Hebrews, and it was really good and helpful for me, but I really feel like I did too much. So I would just say, work on resting more. Part of that was me wanting our kids to feel like they were normal, which they weren't, clearly, anymore. And so, but I would just give more time to rest and to read the book of Psalms. I don't think that was ever recommended to me, but I think it would have been helpful. I was just told, just focus on God's promises, but when you're traumatized like that and you're in such shock, you can't seem to think where to look in the Bible. And I think the Psalms would have been helpful. Michael did really good to continue us with our morning Bible time and staying in the Word. but I didn't want to go to church either. And he forced that up on us.
Yeah, the same thing happened in our family.
Yeah.
So I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the advice I would give, is that to press back into God and his sovereignty, to learn his character and seek that out. Because if you continue to go the opposite of lament, you're going to end up bitter. And that's the advice I would say is, let's do all we can to not move into a bitterness and a hurt that lasts, or be stuck in our grief. And the only way to do that is to really focus in on, yes, let's lament and lay our cries, or give our cries out to God, as we're taught through many of the lamenting Psalms. And that's a great model, as Peggy indicated. Get there. And then as time proceeds and you feel like, oh, I can maybe look for other things in Scripture, look at who he is, and consistently all the way through the Old Testament, even though it's so harsh. For Peggy's explanation of, there's so many innocent people that had to die and seemed to die. Look for his character all the way through that, and then hold on to his promises when you're struggling with. And that's where I went to find the times that I was hurting or feeling from the trauma that we experience is real, and that gives the evil one a playground to mess with your mind. And I would say then focus in on his promises that are not broken. You see continually fulfilled and kept all the way through as you dig into those promises. So those are the advice that I would say I'd give to, especially a dad. And the other side of that on waiting dads is, continue to talk with your wife and tell your story. It's okay to tell your story.
Yeah. Very good advice from both of you. Thank you for that. Many bereaved parents experience what we call grief brain. Did you all experience that?
I'll say the first thing that comes to my mind with that is I had ordered new checks when we were in Colorado still, and I could not find them. And, we needed to pay our bills, and I was the bill payer, and I could not find them. And it makes you feel not just crazy, but ultra crazy when stuff like that happens. But yes, and it still happens. I just totally forget some things sometimes, but it seems to be less for me now. Michael can describe, he would be driving places often and would not know where he was.
Yeah, I ended up in places I thought, well, this is not where I was going. Why am I here? Yeah. Multiple times, just trying to come home from a route from work to my house that I took every day. And I ended up not knowing some place that I was at. I don't know how I got here, and I don't know where this is. So I'd call and say, Peggy, I'm going to try to find my way home. Just in a regular routine drive.
Yeah.
But then, I thought some of it was, am I aging or that? But it was just a complete forgetfulness or loss of thought in there, that I said, well, no, it's not me losing a word or not finding a word. It's just, there's no thought.
You're doing something and you don't remember doing it, or, you don't remember what you had just done. And yes.
Yeah. I think for me, the loss and the grief took up all of my brain space.
Yes.
And, you're just constantly thinking about it and replaying it. And, and it just, I didn't have room for anything else.
Yeah.
And grief brain is very common among bereaved parents. And it lasts for a long time. And I asked someone one time who was a little bit farther down the road than me, I said, how long can I blame grief brain for all of these things I can't remember and that I can't seem to do anymore?
Yes.
And she looked at me and she said, as long as you need to.
Yes.
And I love that answer. And so I still blame grief brain for a lot of things. And, I really think it's a legitimate thing. So
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to know that you guys had it too, or have it too.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. Not alone. So at our retreats, we often talk about how men and women grieve differently. How have the two of you grieved differently or alike, and how are you working through that together?
I would say mine is probably just tears, a lot of tears. The first of the beginning of the school year and the end of the school year is very difficult for me. Seasons changing, and I've just learned to say, if I get snippy, because I do get extra snippy on those days, so I'm really sorry I'm having a Mason day,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helped us work together and make sure that we are communicating, because before it was, oh, she's upset about something, and that's okay, and I can figure it out. But it really put us into a specific action to say we're having a Mason day, so we knew that it's not just the normal, I'm frustrated at this or frustrated at that. It's, no, I'm hurting, and there's all kinds of things going on. So yes, I knew when to leave her by herself or when to hold her,
Mm-hmm.
especially when she was able to tell me I'm having a Mason day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the same for me. I was able to just say, this is a Mason day for me, to where I was able to get some grace in whatever's going on, because I tend to just internalize everything and just hold it in. But I still needed to let them know I'm holding things in, and I could become irritable if poked. So if I
Sure.
declare that, communicate that, it was helpful. And
Mm-hmm.
we've done well to kind of recognize that. And now it's not so much that we need to tell each other. We're able to kind of say, oh, this is a tough day for you, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, well,
Yeah.
let's talk about this, or let's talk about that. And that helped us overall, because there were days early on that it was just tears pouring from me just on anything. But as things go on, and I said, oh, I've got to get back and I've got to do me and work and do this. I tried to bottle it and internalize it, but there were days that I couldn't, and the kids needed to know. And most of the time for the kids, what I would tell them is, okay, guys, this is a really tough day for me. I need hugs from every one of you. Please give me a
Mm-hmm.
hug.
Yeah.
Overall, because really they seemed not too affected so many times that were like, are you guys okay? So I made sure that I showed that I was emotional and teary, and told them when I needed their attention and a hug.
Mm-hmm. And they were they have been really receptive to that. Mason was a deep, long, strong hugger every day. I think I got a hug from him. And McAllen, not so much. Miles is very much like Mason in that. And Madison, she just loves attention of any kind. But Miles will come and give us a hug, before bed every night. So I'm thankful for that. And they didn't seem to be afraid to come and, give him a hug when he asked.
Mm-hmm. Well, just using that phrase, this is a Mason day.
Yes.
That's honest, and
Yep.
it lets the other person know this is not about you. This is not something you've done wrong. This is just a Mason day, and I'm having a hard day. It's great to just have that little phrase
Yeah.
that you can use when you need to.
Yep. We learned that from another family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing to use with your kids too, so they know that it's not something they did wrong, or in some way they're, letting you down or whatever. It's just a Mason day.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So we know that birthdays and holidays and heaven days can all be really difficult after the loss of a child. You guys are just approaching that 5-year mark. That's kind of a significant milestone. And I was thinking, Peggy, about how the proximity of this date is to Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Mother's Day is a very, very difficult holiday.
Mm-hmm.
How have you guys worked through the holidays, maybe Mother's Day in particular?
Yes, Mother's Day has always been a day I've preferred to not go to church, but from way before Mason's death, just because I know it's so painful for so many mothers, not just mothers who have lost a child. And so after Mason's death, when we were in Colorado, I don't even know what we were doing that first year. I remember somebody brought us flowers, a bunch of roses, because the youth group was selling them for a Mother's Day fundraiser or something. But after that, we just went on a hike, and it was a beautiful, peaceful time. We had as a family. Mason's birthday was just 2 months after his death. So he was almost 14. And so birthdays are the hardest day for me. And he had actually already drawn out the cake that he wanted me to make for him for the next 2 years, if that's not really odd. They were both Star Wars cakes. And so at that point, I had made a lot of the children's cakes, but I had pretty much stopped, but he knew what he wanted. McAllen's birthday had just happened. And so I always try, before the kids' birthdays come, ask what kind of cake they would like. And he said, well, I'm going to draw what I want for my next two. So we had those made each time. So Mother's Day, actually, I'll go back. Our anniversary is 2 days before the day Mason died. So it's our anniversary, then Mason's death, and then Mother's Day. So I love spring and the month of May, and I also dislike it very much. But I have just learned to also embrace the fact that I have 3 other living children that I love dearly, and I'm so thankful for them also. So it's a gentle balance that day. What I do last year, a friend who has younger children talked me into going away on a little trip to Florida. So just she and I went, and it was a beautiful time, but I really missed my family. So I had not been on an airplane in years. And so that was just a little treat to get away, but I don't want to do that again. I don't think, without my family, especially on Mother's Day. So,
Well, the first 3 years, we made the decision around anniversary date for Peggy and I around that time that we should take a family trip somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one time it was in a cabin in Estes Park, and one time it was out here in Kansas at an Airbnb out on a farm that had pigs and chickens and geese and cows and sheep. And Peggy just loves animals, so that was just a good quiet place. So the kids and I were able to take BB guns and Nerf guns and airsoft guns and blanket things and go on walks, and she could go visit the ducks and the pigs and talk to them as well. So it was just us and as a family out, not kind of considering, oh, what day is it? And we had to go to church on Mother's Day, that kind of thing. We didn't. We did church on our own as a family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just time to get away and just kind of be with ourselves and our thoughts to really make sure. And then she started some time ago a memory journal to say, if we have a thought of Mason or a memory of Mason, just bring it up and write it. And that helped us in those times as well, because we actually do talk about Mason. And then his birthday, and especially his birthday, since he likes milkshakes, Peggy learned from a mom about a random act of kindness card that we developed. So we go to a place that makes milkshakes usually, and hand them a bunch of cash and say, just buy everybody's milkshake that comes through until the cash is gone, and hand out these cards, or we hand the cards out and say, this is in honoring our son Mason in that regard. And that's been just really exciting.
Yeah, what a great idea that is. I love that. You guys have just great ideas. I love to hear some of your thoughts.
Oh, thank you. It came from other parents,
Yeah. I love that. So have you found a way to respond to the how many kids do you have question in a way that works for you?
Yes, it's still very awkward almost every time. I just say, yes, we have 4, and then I stop unless they ask more, which a lot of people do. And then I start with Madison, because I know if I start with Mason, I'll lose them.
Right.
They won't hear anything else I say. So I start with Madison. She's our youngest, and then go up. So it works perfectly since Mason's our oldest. And then I just say, and Mason's our oldest. He would be 18 if he were here with us, but he died in an accident in 2020, and he lives in heaven. And most people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." And that's it. Some will ask what happened, but usually it's a pretty short conversation, and you can tell who's truly going to be your friend and who doesn't want to be around that, devastation.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same way we handle it.
Mm-hmm.
It works out pretty well for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us that have lost a child have this very sharp dividing line in our lives between the before and the after. Talk about the before Michael and Peggy and the after Michael and Peggy.
So I was all about, hey, let me work, let me do well to provide for my family, so they have things that they want to do and nice things to have a nice house or that. And I wanted to exceed at being the best employee type individual and do that. And so and then have other opportunity to say, oh, let me learn about this, or let me watch this movie and do these things overall, and find ways to have fun with the kids. And that was prior to, so it was work and kids and find fun things to do, that kind of thing. The after Mason's accident, it's how do I find God, and how do I point people to God, and how do I make sure that they understand that none of this job stuff and fun things to do and things to acquire and build and whatever means nothing, because it is nothing. And it sometimes saddens my wife, because she tells me I don't think that, but I really don't care much about the world. I don't care about the job, and I don't care about who did what in the Super Bowl or the World Series or anything like that I used to want to know about. And it's more about, oh, what are we doing for the kingdom, and how are we doing this for the kingdom? That sometimes I even think in my current role, sometimes those that I work with wonder, what are you doing? You don't even have a spark of, we're going to make a lot of money and we can make a lot of money. Like, well, I don't care. It's not
Right.
about making a lot of money. I want to pay my bills and put food on the table. But in this role, I made sure, like many, that in my job is, if we can point individuals to Christ somehow, even in taking care of individuals with wounds, that's what I look at, and look for the opportunity to pray with individuals that are hurting because of a wound, or just whatever's going on. We have that opportunity. So I get to say to all those that I hire, are you okay if we would pray with individuals that are our under our care for wound healing? So, and that's the way it is for anything. So I don't have that desire to just be the top executive here and there and make all this dollar. It doesn't mean anything to me anymore.
Yeah.
I would say for me, specifically with schooling, the curriculum that we use is very well known classical Christian curriculum, and it's pretty rigorous in the high school levels. There's a mom in our group, and she asked one day, what I recommended, and I said, really? Just to spend some time enjoying your kids. If you don't get the math done, you don't get the math done. What is going to be important if one of your children were to die today? What's going to be important in your mind? Spending time with them outside catching frogs, or getting the math done? So I feel like I'm still pretty structured with school, especially with me working a couple days a week now. But I also feel like with our children, I just really try to embrace enjoying time, together and with others, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You'll never regret that time that you've spent with them.
No.
Yeah. It really changes our whole perspective on things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, for
Yes,
sure.
it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Think about your relationship with God before and now after. How has it changed and what have you learned about his character?
I'll say, part of me really struggled with that because I felt, like I said, we had just started to read as a family at the beginning of that year through the Bible in a year, and we were doing our daily Bible time, and we were getting plugged in with church and using Christian curriculum with our school, and really trying to focus on the Lord and everything that we did. And the kids and I had written Psalm 91 on our sliding glass door the week that Mason died. And so I really struggled with that scripture for a very long time because I thought, under the shelter of the Most High, we will be protected. He will be our refuge. And I thought, well, what about Mason? And so for a very long time, it was just the last few years, I realized that's for me. He is my refuge. And so Mason's already there. He's living his best life. Yes, it still seems horrible, that he was not saved in the way I wanted him to be saved, but he truly is living his best life. And there's nothing that I could have done to change that. I definitely think now I see the Lord differently. I struggled for a long time to say or sing the songs at church of how good he is to me. I would say, oh, he's good, but just not to me, and some days I still struggle with that. But I think his word has helped me tremendously. One of my favorite verses in the last year is Habakkuk 3:17 through 19. And it says, though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. So that was very helpful for me. I said, what? I've read the Bible how many times and I do not remember that verse. And I had to read it again. Though the fig tree should not blossom, all these horrible things, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. So that has been like my key verse in the last year. The first verse, and it's on my license tag on my car, is 2 Corinthians 4:17 and 18. And it just says second COR 4:17, 18. And I've had two people stop me in traffic and say something which was so sweet. But that verse is, for this light momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. So clearly, the Lord is speaking to me through his word, unlike ever before.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, that's good. Hang in there. For me too, it's really been pre Mason's drowning was I do what I need to do, and I go to God when I think I need to go to God, and I look to say, oh, let me learn more from His Word and that. And I was doing well at even becoming more and more understanding of resting in Him and pushing into, oh, it's not me that has to do anything. But then after Mason's drowning, it was truly for me to say, I need to know who this God is from a sovereign standpoint, because that's what's confusing me. In his sovereignty, he could have not had any of this happen. And why is that? And so that's really got me seeking and looking to say, I need to understand that. because I at Mason's drowning, it was very frustrating the next morning to say, no one perpetrated evil upon Mason. There was no one that did it to him. And now I can't reconcile. Well, I thought death was from evil, and evil, resulted, bad things happen, and that's how people would die, especially kids. And it had to get into, okay, on God's sovereignty, it was before the foundation of that he knew all. And in developing and creating earth, we, man, sinned and separated, creating evil throughout because of the curse. And so it wasn't anything that someone perpetrated upon him. I learned, no, at the curse, the whole earth was cursed. Our DNA was cursed. We see storms that we never saw before. We see just destruction and deterioration and moving away from the order that he set and kept in motion. And his finger had to be released from that evil to keep it in motion. And now we see continued deterioration and chaos away from his order. And that's where I'm getting to know more and more of, he's given us a way back to that order. And if I can continue that and point people to that way back in Jesus, then we're all where Mason's at right now at some point, and we have that eternal hope within us. And that's what's changed for me.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you. Now, you guys lead a While We're Waiting support group there in Wichita area. If someone were to visit your group, what would they find there?
Quite a few moms and dads. We had a wonderful discussion just last week, focusing in on this is what it is. And you are now in a sacred circle, is what we've begun to call it, to say, nobody wants you here, because what it takes to get into this sacred circle is so tragic. But now that you're here, we want you here to know that, yes, we're going to love on you, support on you, and help you understand all the things that you need someone to walk with you in this journey. Because if you don't have someone to walk with you on the journey, you may not make it to our homeward destination, our heavenly destination. And that's what we really focus on. We have one gentleman that comes regularly, and we are excited that he just gets to hear the love of Christ even without being preached at. And that's what's important to him, because he's quite angry yet.
Yeah. And that's the thing when we have these support groups and even our retreats, people come however they are.
Exactly.
If they're angry, if they're broken, which all bereaved parents are broken to some degree, if they're questioning, if they're doubting, that's welcome at our events, because all of us at one point in our journey, we're there too. Sometimes even go back there. And so, yeah, it's a safe place to bring all of those doubts and questions and struggles.
And I think the people that come greatly, I don't know if enjoy is the word to use, but they just have a peacefulness about it and look forward to coming back, every month.
Yeah. It's like you said, a sacred circle that no one else can understand unless you've been there. And we also have a While We're Waiting weekend scheduled for the weekend of October 3rd through 5th in Heston, Kansas. And you guys will be facilitating it. We had our first one there just this last fall, and it was amazing. We just had such a great time together, and the opportunity to meet so many amazing moms and dads that weekend. And I'll put the link to register for that in the show notes. We've got a few spots left. There is no cost to attend, and I know that you guys would love to have the opportunity to meet maybe some of our listeners there. It's always such a blessed time at those retreats. Yeah. So one more question that I always like to ask. Has music been an important part of your grief journey? And if so, what is on your playlist?
Yes, for me, for sure. I listen to music a lot. Toby Mac's Faithfully. We all loved Toby Mac as a family. Before Mason died, we wanted to go to a concert, and we finally went after he went to heaven. He came out there to the Greeley Stampede, I think it was called, and we all got to go. And I did not know that he had lost a child also, but I had learned that like the week before we went to that concert. But I really like that song, and any of Shane and Shane's music. We actually, Mason included, got to see them in concert in a small town in southwest Kansas.
Wow.
That was orchestrated by a group that Michael worked with. And Michael actually drove one of them to the airport, and his family, or maybe it was one of the band.
No, it was both Shanes and their wives, because we had a minivan, so they all could fit. So
Yeah.
I got to bring them from the airport to the event because it was a network of hospital administrators that was putting on a concert for physicians just to have downtime and worship time. And
Yeah.
Shane and Shane gave the concert for those physicians.
So I've always loved their
Very
music, but they, of course, have sing a bunch of psalms. And so love them. Though You Slay Me is one of my favorite songs that, makes me mad sometimes when I hear it, but it's beautiful. And then my most favorite newer one that I've embraced is called This We Know. And I think that's by Vertical Worship. Shane and Shane also sings that sometimes. So I'm not really sure who created that, but it's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll have to look that up.
I get to listen when Peggy's listening, so that's really helpful. So I don't argue because I like all music for the most part.
Sure.
But when I need a song and I need to hear a song, I ask to play Lead On, Good Shepherd. I think it's Patrick Mayberry is what I wrote down.
Yeah.
Lead On, Good Shepherd really speaks to me and gives me a pull back into an actual praise of, okay, I have a good shepherd and he's going to lead. And I continue to say, lead on. I like that song.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, we have been talking for quite a while and we need to wrap up. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish?
I would just like to encourage any other waiting parents to get out there and try a support group. To me, just being with others who have been through a child loss was so helpful for me, just to see, you guys talk about drafting a lot, and just to see that others are still alive and doing okay. I wouldn't say we're doing awesome, but we're all doing okay, and, striving to glorify the Lord in all that we do and say, and how encouraging that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Michael? Any closing words?
No, I think it is just to follow up on Peggy's statement. It is important to have a sacred circle if you're a waiting parent, and it truly brings some peace and gives you some comfort that you definitely need. And so look for that sacred circle and join. You'll be welcomed.
Yeah, great advice. Well, thank you guys so much. I have enjoyed our conversation this afternoon.
Thank you. I have too.
Yes, I have too.
Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the While We're Waiting Hope After Child Loss podcast. If this podcast has been a blessing to you, please take just a moment to leave a rating or a review, and please feel free to share it with someone you know who might be helped by it. We're so grateful for all of you who come back and listen every week, and those of you who may be listening for the very first time. I hope God has used it to encourage you today and to help you live well while you're waiting.